Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
Mark Rutte, thank you for talking to Bloomberg. In these very seats yesterday, Vladimir Zelensky sort of sat and told me that the one thing he wanted American troops in Ukraine after any kind of peace is gone. His first preference, of course, was NATO, but his second thing was the necessity of having Americans there. Do you agree with that?
Can I be totally open with you? I'm not sure it is wise to discuss future peace deals through the media. I mean, if I was...
You're telling me that?
Yeah, but if you are Vladimir Putin, you sit in a reclining chair smoking your big cigar, and you can tick the boxes, yes or not, territory given up, yes or not, NATO, whatever. I mean, let's not do that. What we have to focus on is to get him, Volodymyr Zelensky, in the best possible position to start those talks. And what helps, for example, is what Trump did this morning, President Trump, in announcing, or yesterday, announcing this extra sanction package on Russia. That's the way forward.
And you think that could have a real effect?
Absolutely. If the Europeans will also help, they're doing a lot, but they could work with the Americans in conjunction. And then, of course, we also have to see what the Ukraine needs more in terms of weapon supply. I guess if the US continues that Europe has to pay more for those weapons, which is only logical. And, of course, we have to spend more here in this part of the world for defense.
This morning, I think you said that this is Europe's problem, it's not Trump's. We shouldn't be blaming him for what's happening.
I hear many people here whining and complaining about Trump, and I would say the problem is not Trump or the US, the problem is Europe. The problem is Europe because at the moment we are not spending enough. Trump has also pointed when the US is supplying a lot of weaponry into Ukraine that we could pay more of the financial burden of that than we are doing currently, and he has always consistently been clear about the fact that he feels that we are under the US umbrella here and not paying enough for that. And luckily, thanks to him in his first term, we are paying more, but with the present level of spending, we will not keep ourselves safe.
If we can both agree that more spending would be good, isn't there a sort of bigger issue behind it? It's not so much the levels of spending, it's the way it's done at the moment. It's such a mess of competing people with competing tanks. Everything's a bit of a... Is there more to be gained by actually having more cohesive spending better done than the actual number?
No, it's and, I'm afraid. It is and a number, and it will have to be really, really much more than we're spending now in this part of NATO, and by the way in Canada. So those not on 2% this year have to reach the 2%. We cannot wait any longer, and then collectively we will decide later this year what exactly the new number should be, but it will be much more than a 2%. And you're right, at the same time, on innovation, on joint procurement, on getting the big contracts done with the defense industrial base, the defense industry, we have to be much better. And by the way, on this last issue, we also need the US to step up, because also the US defense industrial base is not producing enough. We are, from Europe now, spending 180 billion since 2022 buying from the US. That could be much more if the US produce more.
What about the idea that this is actually part of a sort of bigger contest? You've got NATO on one side, you've got Russia, China, Iran on the other. What is you've come into this job, what is your view of that setup at the moment, those two opposing forces?
I started 3.5 months ago. Two early conclusions. One, we are safe now, not in 5 years if we don't spend more. And second, on your question, this is not a conflict between Russia and Ukraine or Russia-Europe. It is really a geopolitical issue because of North Korea, China and Iran, and that's why we need to get to a good deal, and we can only get to a good deal if we don't negotiate through the media. And a good deal means that you will not have Putin high-fiving with Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping and the mullahs in Iran. It's crucial that we come out stronger, that the US, the West is coming out on top.
And what about the way it looks? I mean, the amount of money we are spending on defense, on procurement, compared with what China and Russia, how do you think that stacks up?
It's a real problem, but there is an issue on spending, and of course Russia is now spending 1/3 of the state budget on defense. Also China is ramping up, but when you look at the output of the defense industrial base, China is producing now 5-6 times what the US is producing. As a collective NATO, we are producing in a full year in terms of ammunition, which is crucial, what Russia is producing in 3 months. So, and this is not sustainable, and that's why I'm saying in 4 or 5 years we cannot defend ourselves if we don't get these two things right, the spending and the defense production.
Isn't the problem, I mean, you used to be the Prime Minister of the Netherlands for a very long time. Isn't the problem, though, how difficult it is to convert factories, weaponry towards things. Putin's got this huge advantage. He can simply take a car factory and turn it into making tanks or whatever.
That's true, but we have seen in the past that we can do it. Look at the United States in the Second World War, that when Roosevelt decided to enter the war after Pearl Harbor, that the US was able to ramp up the industry production because basically putting the whole of the US on a war footing. The minimum we now have to do is to move into a war mindset. Our mindset should be, we are not literally at war, yes, through hybrid and cyber attacks and assassination attempts and jamming of airplanes, there's a lot happening there which we have to fight back on, but we are not in a real hard war at the moment, but we need to get to the mindset, and the mindset will then also make it possible for us to get on our industry base more on a war footing.
One last thing on mindset. Trump, all this rhetoric, tariffs, all these things, can you think of any military alliance in history that has survived with one set of people issuing tariff threats and things on others? It's very hard, I think, to think of that as an alliance when there's so much friction within it.
On the other hand, it also helps you to get these debates going. And I've seen some of the reaction coming out of the European Commission saying we have to buy more oil and more LNG from the US. So they are reacting. They are stepping up. And when you look at defense spending, I mean, it is a big deficit in terms of the Europe buying so much more from the US than the US buying from Europe. So it is a bit of a mixed picture. But in the end, that Trump is starting that debate is good. And he will always do it in his own way, which is with the door in his hand coming in. But that's okay, because that makes it possible for you then to come to an agreement. I'm not too worried.
Well, that's a good note to end on. Mark Rutte, thank you very much for talking to us.